Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today marks the 20th anniversary of 9/11, so I'm going to share with you some interesting stories of my life from around that period, where I actually spent the summer of 2001 in California and then the last couple of weeks of August in New York. I was supposed to be in New York on the date of 9/11, but I headed back to Northern Ireland for a wedding, in fact. I found myself over in London on the date of 9/11 and flew back to Dublin actually the next day. I can tell you this, Gatwick Airport was a bit intense on the 12th of September 2001. Anyway, I spent the summer of 2001 in San Francisco and Berkeley. I was working over in the dry docks in Berkeley on a New Zealand ship called Telma, I believe. And I spent a lot of the time in San Francisco getting stoned. So to be honest with you, I can't remember much of my time there at all. In fact, what I do remember is the weed was really strong, and I've got probably one funny story from that time that I do recall. I remember I got stoned one day with a Kiwi and an Aussie. We set out to find this Irish bar that we heard was serving cheap Guinness on that particular day. So we got on the tram, I think it was, or the streetcars in San Francisco, and I think we were looking for Potrero was the district. Got on the tram anyway, and I was sitting beside the Kiwi at the back, the Aussie was up the front, and we were completely baked, absolutely baked. And after about 20, 30 minutes, I remember turning around to the Kiwi and going, "Is this our stop yet?" And the Kiwi just looked at me and goes, "I know where we're going, I thought you knew." And then we looked at each other and laughed and went, "Well, I hope the Aussie knows." Went up to the Aussie and went, "Listen, what's the story? Is this our stop yet?" The Aussie was like, "I don't know where we're going, I thought you two knew." So we went up to the driver and said, "Listen, is this Potrero yet?" And he just looked at it and went, "Potrero's 30 stops that way." So we got off at the next stop. Now, it mightn't be Potrero, but for some reason that's in my head. Anyway, we got off at the next stop and we found ourselves in the Castro district. Now, Castro district, it's one of the first gay neighborhoods in America, I believe. Now, as a 21-year-old boy just fresh out of Ireland, I can tell you this. I saw some things walking around that district that day that I had not seen before. And bear in mind, I was completely stoned off my head, so it was a real eye opener on that day. So San Francisco was an interesting spot. I'll speak some more about that on another day. I got over to New York for the last 3 weeks of the summer, and New York was interesting. I was pretty wrecked, to be honest with you, because I had spent the whole year traveling around the world. I just came from 7 months in Australia. I actually spent my last night in Australia sleeping on the streets of Brisbane. I don't know why. I was with an Israeli guy called Eli Yagana. I still owe that guy $100. I did try and look for him when I was in Tel Aviv in, it was 2013, but I couldn't find him. I actually did look for him. And so I went from Brisbane, spent 3 days in Auckland, and the only memory I have from Auckland is flying around these side streets with some mad Brazilian in a car. We were stoned off our heads. That's it. That's all I remember of Auckland. I hear New Zealand's a lovely country, but I couldn't tell you. Auckland, I went on to Tahiti, spent a week there, fell off a bike, busted my cruciate ligament, destroyed my knee for the next 10 years. So by the time I got to New York, I was exhausted. It was like 10 months of booze and weed and just madness, complete madness. Not much sleep in there. So when I was in New York, I was just exhausted. I didn't even go and see the Twin Towers. Didn't go and see the Statue of Liberty, nothing. I was once famously described as the worst tourist in the world. My sister as well, by the way, while we were in Istanbul, because all we wanted to do was go to the bar. So it was kind of the same when we were in New York. And it's funny what you remember though, because I remember coming in from the airport and we were in the back of a van. It was probably one of those construction vans, because like that's what the Irish do in America. We built it. Um, and I remember the driver. I think it was Adrian. I remember him once says just pointing down, going, "Ah, that's Manhattan down there." I don't even know if I bothered moving my head to look at it. So I spent a couple of weeks in New York. I was working in Yonkers. Now, Yonkers is an area pretty famous. There's a lot of Irish there and a lot of Italians there. And McLean Avenue is the spot where a lot of the lads go drinking. Well, occasional drink now, once a week, after Mass on a Sunday, of course. On Saturday and Sunday and Monday and Tuesday. But anyway, this particular Sunday, me and three other lads. Now I'll not name them. They know who they are. We were drinking heavily, very very heavily. In fact, it's really interesting because I remember at one stage going, "This is our 16th bottle of beer," and you'd think to yourself, "How do you remember something like that? You mustn't have been drinking that much." Well, in New York, they have this system where every few drinks you buy, the barman knocks on the bar and goes, he buys you one back. So I remember thinking that, going, that's how I could remember how many we had that day. So then we decided to go and have a little spliff down a side street in Yonkers. Now, that wasn't a good idea. So we were down the alley, me and these three unnamed associates, rolling a spliff. And who would come along? Only the nice, friendly Italian American. I assume they're mafioso. I can only assume that. Now, they didn't take too kindly to us Irish lads being down this alleyway rolling a spliff. And they took the stuff off us, which I would have did myself. They took the stuff off us anyway. And as they were driving off, didn't I, with the bravery of 16 bottles of Coors Light, stick my finger up at them? Now, that wasn't a good idea. As soon as I did that, the brakes went on, and you know they talk about a fight or flight moment. Well, this was my fight or flight moment because the brakes went on. The Italian American got out of the car. I remember him well. He came walking towards me and he caught me. He caught me a lovely punch. It must have been on, was it the right or the left? I don't know. I remember it to this day. He caught me a lovely punch. I was at that moment, I was like, okay, don't even react. Just keep walking, keep walking, keep walking straight. Took the punch, kept walking straight. And of course, like, doubled back not so long after that and got back to the bar. And I remember getting back into the bar, and one of the lads, let's call him Seamus. Seamus said to me, "You bloody idiot, those guys had guns." Or, "Those guys had a gun," he said. And I was thinking to myself, well, okay, so here's my piece of advice to you. If you're ever down an alleyway in Yonkers in New York, and some nice friendly Italian Americans come upon you rolling a spliff, the first thing you should always do, "Here lads, do you have a gun?" Because if they've got a gun, then obviously you're not going to stick your finger up at them when they're driving off. So there's my piece of advice for you for the day. That's my story about the Mafia and I in Yonkers. Now, I can't really remember much else in New York, to be honest with you. I went back to Northern Ireland to a wedding. I don't know why I did that anyway. And I got over to London 2 weeks later, a place called Eastbourne. It's outside London. And I was visiting a girl that I knew, or well, I had been living with in Sydney and seeing. Now I know what you're thinking. Didn't that lad say he was a virgin? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a born again virgin. That's what my brother calls it anyway. Born again virgin. So I was over with that lady anyway in London or Eastbourne or Lewis, I think it was, on the day of 9/11. And I remember the news came on the telly about, I think it was 3:20 around that we saw it. We'd been busy that day. Draw your own conclusions. So we'd been busy that day and the news came on. We were obviously transfixed for hours looking at looking at the attacks to 9/11, and by about 10 o'clock, the president still hadn't spoken. So we got busy. We got busy on the sofa in the front room, and let's just say we were having a little bit of fun. But then in the background, didn't the president come on and start talking? And I'd been waiting for the president to speak all day. I was like, the president's speaking. And I remember sort of saying to the girl, oh, the president's speaking. This is the middle of the act. So she said to me, what, you can stop? And I was like, no. But thinking in the back of my head all the same, listen, we can have sex anytime. The President of America only speaks once live after 9/11. But I didn't say it. I continued on, and it took longer than normal, actually. Especially for a ginger virgin, born again virgin. So, needless to say, that relationship didn't last much longer. For I can tell you this, as soon as a lady realizes that George's bush is more important than hers, you don't stand a chance, really, do you? Absolutely not. So that relationship ended about 6 months later, and I was back in Northern Ireland for my last year at university. And by my standards, it was actually a very, very quiet year. Not a lot happened. Not a lot happened at all, actually. I started eating a lot of chocolate. And by September 2002, the first anniversary of 9/11, I was actually in Paris with another girl. Now I know what you're thinking. The ginger virgin strikes again. You're right. And I wasn't dreaming. Although her name was Aisling, which is in fact the Gaelic for dream or vision. So we were in Paris on the first anniversary of 9/11. Now I remember reading in one of the books about being careful in the metro lines for pickpocketing. And I remember walking down this elevator in the metro station, and I looked over to my side and I saw a bag. And I looked at the bag, I just looked across and I was like, that's 2 passports. I instantly knew it was passports, and I grabbed the bag and looked inside it. Those 2 American passports in it. And I knew straight away from that thing I had read about pickpocketing, I knew straight away what had happened. Somebody had obviously had their bags stolen, they'd taken the money and they'd chucked the passports. So me, being the good Samaritan that I am, hoping I was going to get a reward, I rang the American embassy and I said to the embassy, listen, I've got these 2 passports, what'll I do? I said, I'll bring them down to the embassy. So no worries, I went along hoping to get my reward. It was with Aisling, got to about, I think it was about 500 meters or a kilometer to the embassy, and that was no further. Because this is the first anniversary of 9/11, les gendarmes were all around the place, and they would not let, especially me, they wouldn't let me anywhere near the place. And I said to the guy, we've got these 2 passports, and typical Parisian, they're not renowned for being particularly nice people. And he was like, no, none. And I said, well, what do I do? And I handed them to him, and I assume that he brought them in and gave them to the embassy, but who knows? Like, he was a Frenchman. Could have put it in the banh mi for all I know. Tasty. So, that is my 9/11 story, taken in London, New York, Paris, San Francisco, Berkeley, Brisbane, Auckland, Tahiti, Northern Ireland, Dublin. I'm finishing up in Vietnam 20 years later. Who'd have thought it? The ginger virgin strikes again with Mr. Pteropod. You're not alone. This one's for you, Matthew Manfredi, my good friend from New York, Long Island.